never imagined I would be crouched by my living room window at 2 in the morning, trembling with fear while hearing the soft footsteps of my only son outside. A son who had once clung to my leg as a toddler, begging for one more bedtime story. But at 62, there I was, hugging the threadbare blanket I'd had for decades, hoping he wouldn't break in and demand more than just money. Before I dive deeper, let me gently remind you to like this video if the story touches you, leave your thoughts in the comments, and please subscribe so you don't miss the next jaw-dropping real-life tale. Because what I'm about to share is proof that sometimes, heartbreak comes from the last person you'd suspect. My son, Theo, used to be a bright, warm-hearted boy who loved coloring books and chasing fireflies in the yard. I'd raise him alone after his father left us for a new life in another city. You might say I spoiled him to fill the gap. New sneakers even when finances were tight, after-school clubs that cost more than I could comfortably pay, lavish birthday parties on a waitress's salary. But I told myself a mother's love was limitless. Surely he'd appreciate the sacrifices one day. The first time he asked me for a significant loan, he was in college. He'd said his financial aid fell through, or that's what he claimed, so I pawned the last piece of jewelry I inherited from my own mother. I remember thinking, it's worth it to see him succeed. He eventually graduated, but the thankful embrace I yearned for never came. Instead, the phone calls dwindled, replaced by the occasional text. "Mom, can you send $500? I'm short on rent." Even then, I convinced myself it was a tough job market. I'd quietly deposit what I could. For years, I waited for the day he'd stand on his own. Then, on a chilly December morning, I answered my door to find a teenage neighbor stammering that my son had abandoned a dog in front of their porch. My dog, Sam. Sam was an older retriever I'd adopted right after my husband left, the sweet soul who had been my only companion on lonely nights. Theo had apparently taken Sam, loaded him into a car, and dumped him because he's too old, too expensive, someone had overheard. My heart broke. I'd never thought Theo could do something so callous. After retrieving Sam, who cowered in confusion, I confronted Theo via phone, voice shaking. He brushed me off, saying, "Mom, you can barely afford your own groceries, so I'm helping you cut down on expenses." That sentence, that twisted logic, gutted me. But I still convinced myself maybe he was just misguided, pressed by financial woes. I decided to hold Sam tighter, searching for a way to mend the bond with my son. Soon after, I discovered the real reason Theo had started visiting me more frequently. I stumbled on a half-completed life insurance application in my name, designating Theo as beneficiary for a startlingly high sum. My signature line was blank, but the form looked nearly done. My personal data typed in, my medical history spelled out. The next day, Theo showed up, brimming with forced cheer. "Mom, we found this great new insurance policy for you," he said. "Protecting you if something happens. You've had those fainting spells, right?" Froze. Fainting spells. I'd had one dizzy episode last year from dehydration, but apparently to him it was enough to brand me near invalid. "Let me see the policy details," I asked softly. He shrugged. "Sure, I'll bring them next time." That night I couldn't sleep, seeing Sam's sad eyes and replaying every sign that my son was pushing me toward a scenario where my unexpected death would yield a massive payout. But my illusions weren't fully shattered until my best friend Paula discovered more evidence. At her banking job, she accidentally noticed Theo had opened an account specifically titled Insurance Claim Funds. We told each other it might be a misunderstanding. Maybe he planned to help me somehow. But a sinking feeling lodged in my gut. The final blow happened on a sunny Sunday. Theo called me mid-morning, voice dripping with fake excitement, urging me to join him on a short trip to Lake Pinecrest. "Mom, the fresh air will do wonders for you," he insisted. I recalled Lake Pinecrest's steep trails, scenic but treacherous if you slip. My heart pounded. This was it, the moment he'd decided to push me off the metaphorical cliff, maybe literally. Terrifying as it was, I said yes. If he was truly plotting an accident, I had to be ready. The night before, I scoured my old caretaker kit. I'd once worked helping seniors with medication, stumbling upon mild sedatives I'd stashed and forgotten. If he intended to drug me, maybe I could flip the script. The next morning, he picked me up in a borrowed SUV, breezing through traffic with unusual cheer. "Gorgeous day, right, Mom?" I nodded numbly, forcing small talk. My mind raced. I would pretend to drink any suspicious beverage, but not swallow it. I'd also made oatmeal cookies for us, secretly laced with just enough sedative to dull a person's senses if consumed greedily. Lake Pinecrest was deserted, exactly as I feared. We parked near a sign reading, "Trail not maintained. Proceed at your own risk." My lips felt dry. "This is the best spot, you sure?" Yes. Theo flashed a grin. "Definitely, it's more private." Alarms blared in my head. We hiked upward, the path growing narrow. Theo whistled, occasionally glancing back to see if I kept up. My knees complained with each step, but I pressed on, adrenaline fueling me. Finally, near a crag overlooking the sparkling lake, he called for a break. "Let's rest here, get some water," he said. My entire body tensed. He reached into his pack, pulling out a shiny, unlabeled bottle. "Here, you first. Gotta stay hydrated." The scenario felt surreal. My own child had turned predator, I the prey. But I forced a smile, unscrewed the cap, and let the water trickle past my lips without swallowing. I coughed theatrically, as though it tasted strange. He bit his lip, likely worried I'd noticed something. "It's a bit off," I teased. "But let me share my cookies in return." I handed him one, then watched as he devoured it quickly. I offered a second. He wolfed that down too, hunger or eagerness overshadowing caution. Over the next minutes we made awkward small talk, him probably waiting for me to drop. I faked dizziness, swaying on my feet. "I feel weird," I murmured. He jumped into action, trying to guide me closer to the cliff. "Mom, come look at the view. It'll help you breathe." My chest pounded. The vantage point loomed, the lake far below. One shove and I'd vanish. Or so he believed. But as we neared the edge, I saw his face contort. The sedation from the cookies took hold. He swayed, blinking in confusion. "What?" he croaked, glancing at me with dawning horror. I stepped back from the ledge. "I'm sorry, my son," I said, tears slipping free. "But you forced my hand." He tried to speak, but his knees buckled. He collapsed onto the rocky ground with a grunt, half-lidded eyes. Heart hammering, I stumbled away from him, trembling. I could have left him near the cliff, let him see how it feels. But my maternal instinct still lurked. So instead, I dragged his heavy frame a safe distance from the edge, panting with the effort. Then, ignoring my tears, I turned and half ran, half slid down the trail, nauseous from heartbreak. In the empty parking area, I fumbled for my phone, calling 911 with frantic energy. "My son. He's up there at Lake Pinecrest, he might be in danger. Please send help." I hung up before giving too many details. Then I drove off. My mind whirled with images of him lying helpless. Was I a monster for leaving him? But then I recalled Sam, my dog, cast off like garbage, the forged insurance forms, the vile plan. No, I wasn't the monster. I was just a mother who refused to die for her child's greed. That night, the phone buzzed relentlessly. I ignored it. By morning, news reached me through a neighbor that rescue teams found Theo disoriented, but alive at the top. He'd been treated for mild hypothermia. The neighbor also mentioned that he was furious, claiming his mother had done something. But there was no evidence. He had only half-formed accusations. Meanwhile, I changed the locks, donated every item that reminded me of his visits, and quietly inquired if Sam might be at a local shelter. Sadly, no luck. Sam was likely far away, never to return. My heartbreak grew into a dull ache that overshadowed even my anger. A few days later, Theo appeared at my door, battered in spirit, demanding answers. When I refused to let him in, he pounded with fists of rage. "Mom, open up. You tricked me," he yelled. My hand shook on the doorknob, but I stayed silent, eventually calling the police to remove him. He spat curses as they led him away, telling me I'd regret it. I slid to the floor, tears soaking my cheeks. For a while I felt like the villain. After all, wasn't I the parent? Didn't I vow to love him unconditionally? Then I remembered the hush in the pine trees at the cliff's edge, the moment he almost ended me, and my guilt morphed into resolution. Over the next weeks, I discovered from a coworker at the senior center that Theo had been trying to open more lines of credit using my name, forging documents. I swiftly contacted a legal aid group. They helped me freeze my credit, file a complaint for identity theft. My heart twisted at how far he'd gone. If you're still watching, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Because tragedies like these, where a child betrays a parent, are more common than we'd like to believe. And sometimes, hearing someone else's story can warn you before it's too late. Meanwhile, I tried to piece together a life after betrayal. Strangely enough, I found a bit of calm in volunteering with an animal rescue. Each wagging tail reminded me of Sam. I'd tear up quietly, wishing I could get closure about my beloved dog. But giving love to these frightened, abandoned animals eased the emptiness. Then, out of nowhere, a local detective visited, revealing the insurance company had found serious irregularities in the forms Theo submitted. They'd cancelled the policy, threatened him with fraud charges. He had fled the county. I nodded, feeling a pang that my son had run from accountability. But at least I was safe from his immediate reach. Life settled into a lonely but safer routine. I read books in the evenings, sometimes weeping over the lost illusions of motherhood. I kept the house modest, refusing to let bitterness define me. Sometimes I allowed myself to recall a younger Theo, how he'd once drawn me crayon hearts. Hurt to remember. The biggest surprise arrived in the shape of a quiet phone call from a vet clinic 2 towns over. Someone had found an older retriever wandering near the highway, microchipped to me. My heart soared. Rushing over, I found Sam, thin but alive, tail thumping in timid hope. I cried, hugging him, grateful that at least one part of my life had come back. That evening, Sam curled at my feet while I sipped tea, feeling the first genuine peace in months. Sure, my son was gone, replaced by a man whose greed overshadowed any family bond. But I still had the capacity to love, like the loyalty in Sam's eyes. People sometimes asked if I regretted letting things go so far, if I wished I'd cut Theo off earlier. The truth is complicated. I believed a mother's love could fix anything, which blinded me to reality. But regret changes nothing. All I can do is shape my remaining years, living with boundaries and self-respect. So if you're out there suspecting your love is being exploited, or facing a child who sees you only as a source of money, please heed my story. Don't wait for them to push you off the metaphorical cliff. Stand up for yourself. And if this resonates, share your experience in the comments. Let's remind one another we aren't alone. Hit that subscribe button to stay in the loop for more real stories that can shake your trust in what you once thought unbreakable. In the end, I survived. And survival taught me that unconditional love must also protect itself. Sam's gentle snores each night, the quiet hush of a house no longer filled with manipulative demands. These are my reminders that life can go on, even after the ultimate heartbreak, losing a child to greed. Maybe Theo will wander back into my life one day, changed. I won't cling to that hope. I have a community of older rescue dogs who need my gentleness and a future that belongs wholly to me. This is how I chose to rebuild after discovering my own child's plan to end me for money. A chilling truth, yes, but ironically, it granted me freedom to finally live on my own terms. I hope my tale can help you find the courage to break free from any toxic ties that bind. And if it did, please remember to give this video a thumbs up, drop your reflections in the comments, and subscribe for the next heartfelt, shocking, and sometimes liberating real-life story. Thank you for staying with me to the end. May we all learn that our worth isn't defined by a child's ingratitude, but by our own decision to choose life, dignity, and, if we can muster it, hope for a kinder tomorrow.